I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show. Today on the James Altucher Show.
What a great story this guy has. Grant Hill, Hall of Fame basketball player. You know, I'm not really up on sports, but I do like to understand what makes someone the best in the world at something. And I was really impressed when I read Grant's book. It's called Game, and I was really impressed talking with him. I'm sure you will be as well. So here we go. My daughter wanted me to tell you that she goes to Duke.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. What year is she at Duke?
This is her freshman year.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
Yeah. Against my wishes, I might add. I sort of feel like kids these days shouldn't go to college. Like, I think student tuitions are too high, and they're not quite learning as much as they should be for that kind of price.
Well, I know about people such as yourself. You sound like my oldest daughter, who questions the validity at times and the importance and significance. But anyway, nevertheless, I'm glad your daughter's there. I'm a trustee. I'm on the board at Duke. So,
Okay.
Of course, I have to advocate for higher ed, but I understand where you're coming from.
Well, you know, it's funny. As a kid, I spent summers at Duke. They had like a summer program for high school kids where you could learn stuff. And I always thought it was like a beautiful campus. And I agree with you. Education is great, but I just wonder if, you know, sometimes it's a little bit of a scam the way they keep raising these tuitions faster than inflation, because they know people will pay it, because people think, oh, I won't get a job unless I go to, you know, a good school and stuff. I know we're not talking about basketball, but this is just conversation.
Well, I mean, I'll just say this. I think the point that you brought up, or the feeling you have about higher ed, I think there are a lot of people who have that same sentiment. And I know that's one of many issues I think that's facing higher education across the board, is some of the things you just brought up. So I'm aware of that line of thinking, and something that we collectively have to figure out how to resolve and hopefully change that.
Yeah, I think there's probably possible solutions. But anyway, Grant Hill, basketball Hall of Famer. You were just getting instituted into the Hall of Fame, I guess, when you finished writing this book, Game. I'm just curious, why did you feel you wanted to write the book? I mean, there's a lot of reasons to write a book, and I'm just curious why you wanted to write a book.
That's a great question. I think the process of being enshrined to the Hall of Fame, I think really prompted me to do this and to take this journey. I mean, I've been a public figure, I guess most, or if not my entire adult life. But to put things out there, to be vulnerable, that was not something that I'd say 5, 10 years ago was something I was interested in doing. Obviously, you do interviews and magazine stories and things of that nature, but to really speak from the heart and share about your life, your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, I wasn't sure I wanted to do that. But I do think that the process of being announced and the lead up to the Hall of Fame enshrinement, I think that naturally puts you in a very reflective mode or state of mind. And you look back and you kind of like, that's like the icing on the cake, the Hall of Fame. And you look back on your career and you just appreciate things and you see things for, I'm the type that I think didn't necessarily like to look back. I always wanted to feel that my best was yet to come. My best years were in front of me. There's new challenges, new goals, new horizons, if you will. So I oftentimes was sort of proud of this idea that you would never know, there was never evidence in my home or homes that I lived in throughout my career and throughout my life. There was never any evidence that an NBA athlete lived there, other than the fact of the size of my shoes and my clothes.
And the full-size basketball court in the backyard.
Well, no, I'm not. I wish as a kid, I wish I had. I mean, I have a goal now because of my kids, but I never put up memorabilia. I never posted photos. I never did any of that. And I thought in part it just, it kept you soft. I wanted to keep achieving, keep going, and even in life after basketball. And so I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing or necessarily healthy, but I think to be able to look back and reflect and really kind of like celebrate some of the successes. And also maybe live a little bit more with some of the hurt and heartache. I think the exercise of doing that was really helpful for me and made me appreciate the ups and the downs of my career and my life.
Were you afraid when you were younger that if you celebrated too early, that it might ruin the future? Like if you thought too early, like, oh, I had the best season ever. This is great. I'm gonna finally be. I'm finally where I want to be as an athlete and a basketball player and so on. Did you ever think that looking back even positively would kind of jinx the future a little bit?
I don't know if it was so much jinxing. I think I was so goal oriented and things that I wanted to accomplish, and I never I didn't have a shrine to myself, and so maybe subconsciously that was there. I mean, maybe subconsciously I didn't. I mean, I was joking when I say I don't want to get soft, but I wanted to keep pursuing. I wanted to keep going. I wanted to keep achieving. And even in retirement, I mean, my career had an interesting trajectory with the injuries and coming back. But even in retirement, it was like, okay, what's next? What's the next challenge? What's the next hurdle? What's the next goal to try to meet? And I think that's sort of an athletic mindset in a lot of ways. But I also don't think it was necessarily healthy because you don't take the time, I think, to smell the roses and be appreciative while you're going through it. And I don't know if I allowed myself to do that. And I didn't get a full appreciation for it while it was happening. And in some respects, I wasn't really happy because I hadn't attained the goals that I set out to do. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I think I was able to go back and really live in these spaces, in these moments, and really try to, okay, what was happening? What was I thinking? What was going through my life? How do I see it now as someone who's middle-aged and has life and perspective and, just a different vantage point on various things that happened throughout my life and career. So, if I could go back, I would probably not necessarily display things in my house, but just enjoy the journey a little bit more than having to go back many years later and enjoy it then.
I mean, this is very interesting. Like you're a young man, a few years younger than me, I might add, and I always wonder with myself that I was always so goal oriented that, you only have one life and you only have one life to appreciate. And if you don't start appreciating it until too late, it could be disappointing. It could be hard. Like if you're always kind of, you mentioned in the middle of the book, Quinn Snyder gives you advice. You should be attacking instead of reacting. And I think that applies a lot to life. Like we're always just reacting to the latest event instead of being uniquely you and moving forward the way you can, and appreciating the whole life around you as opposed to just reacting to what the latest event is, whether it's an injury or the next game coming up or a relationship or whatever. And I wonder if it benefits when you're younger to just react to things so that you face them full on instead of, you know, stopping to smell the roses.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're onto something, and I think I realized that through this process. I mean, life is going to have peaks and valleys. You're going to have ups and downs, and as it related to my career, that was certainly the case. And I think one of the things, and I talked about it in the book, and Coach K used to talk about this when we were on the court, and just the idea of the idea of next play, and regardless of what just occurred or what just happened, stay in the moment, move on to the next play, prepare for the next play. That allows you to stay present, allows you to stay in the moment, and allows you to be at your best. And I think I kind of lived that way. I lived like it was this next play. It was next. And so I never really got tied up or emotionally wrapped up in whatever good or bad happened. And in some ways, that may have helped me going through some really tough times with my injury, facing some difficult moments. I never really allowed myself to feel what that was like. And I just kept pushing forward, next play. And I think in some ways it may have helped me, get through it and come back and resume my career. I'll be honest, I think as I was preparing for the Hall of Fame, I got into a little bit of a dark place because now I'm feeling those moments. Here's an exciting, and I didn't put this in the book, but here's an exciting moment that sort of validates your career, even though your career had some tremendous setbacks and hurdles. And what I started thinking is, well, man, if I received this accomplishment for essentially a half a career, well, what could have happened if I had the whole career and I didn't have the injury setbacks? And I kind of started to get bitter. And I think that led to me peeking back and looking back and starting to reflect more, which that's obviously a moment to reflect. And so, I had to kind of live through that and work through some of those feelings and emotions during that time, and also during this process of writing this book.
And look, I'm sure as you start promoting this book, you're going to be dealing with this a lot because your career is defined in many ways by, how many points you scored, how many awards you won, how many games you won, and on and on. But there's also the other side for you in particular. And you just said the words, even though you had these injuries that collapsed part of your career. And like, I was just watching a video of other NBA players talking about you, saying how, many said you're the greatest of all time. You're the best. You're the best. Some would say you would have been the best if not for the injuries. How does that, I mean, obviously that's not the most, nobody celebrates hearing that, but what do you think specifically?
Well, I think, through the process of writing this book, and then even just, I guess, reflecting on the process of writing the book, that makes sense. You come to realize and accept that, hey, like I was on an incredible trajectory early in my career, and that got derailed, and it almost ended and ruined my career. And I was able to fight through that and return and play and have great fulfillment and enjoyment from those years. But yeah, I mean, sometimes as you go back and you walk the reader or you go through and prepare yourself to write about what happened, you're back in those moments. You're back in those moments and you're trying to remember things and conversations, reactions to what a doctor might have said, or a medical profession, or the feeling after a game where you knew, okay, the ankle was not holding up and another surgery was on the horizon. And so, you have, you allow yourself to feel. I mean, I guess that's what I said. I don't know if I was, I talked about this with my wife, who was right there kind of with me when we went through all of that. And I shared some of this with her in the process of writing the book. And she said, I didn't think you were human. Like, you just kept going. It was like, okay, all right, what's next? Okay, I got to do that. I got to eat. I got to work out. Like, it was just, you just keep going. And maybe that's a survival technique. Maybe, like I said, that's the athletic or athlete's mindset. Maybe that's how we're conditioned in our society. You just keep going, keep going, keep going. But that's what I did. And I didn't really understand or allow myself to maybe feel what that was. And if I did feel it, maybe I wouldn't have come back. I don't know. But I certainly learned about myself and learned about that part, the bad and the good. Like, I look back like, I was actually pretty good. I didn't necessarily see it that way because I wasn't where I wanted to be. And so learning to enjoy the journey, I think, was one of the lessons I took from the process of writing the book.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to unpack there. One is, while these injuries were happening, or even afterwards, when you went back to the game, but you weren't necessarily scoring the same points per game, which could be a factor of age, could be a factor of the surgeries, the recovery, who knows. But what struck me was you were talking to your wife about it. You wouldn't have had those conversations with your wife without those injuries. Our existence as humans involves family and our relationships with a wife and or spouse. And many people, I think, who have just a straight line upwards, if such a thing is possible, maybe don't get the benefit of having those types of conversations with their spouse. So maybe there was benefit.
The conversations with my wife, though, weren't in real time. Like, we didn't talk about, I wasn't vulnerable with her. I wasn't having, in the moment, particularly with the injuries, that was, after the fact. That was 20 years later, almost 20 years later, as I'm going through, one, I guess, the enshrinement process, and then two, as I'm writing this book and telling my story. But yeah, I mean, having a support system, having family, having friends. The one thing I've appreciated, and I had a unique perspective because my dad was a professional athlete, so I heard good and bad of being a professional athlete, whether he experienced it or his contemporaries. But I'm very grateful that I've had people in my life who were going to tell me what I need to hear as opposed to what I want to hear. And I've said many times before that the mix of youth, fame, and a lot of money is very, very dangerous. And it's dangerous for that person going through it, but also can be for those that are around that person. And so whether it was my wife, my parents, my support structure, I mean, I've always had people who've told me when I'm wrong, and have held me accountable when I need to be held accountable. And
Like, what was an instance? What was a specific instance where the gap between what you needed to hear and what you wanted to hear were really great?
I think it's probably daily in my household right now.
That's normal. But like, when it's like a come to Jesus moment for you, when was that?
I mean, I think one thing with my parents, and I'm so fortunate and blessed. I think my parents, look, most people think their parents are incredible, and they are. I mean, parents who are engaged and involved in their children's lives, I think, are heroes and are angels on earth, as I say. But my parents, up until COVID, worked. They never asked me for money. If anything, I go back and see my parents, they still give me cash. And
Here's $20. Buy some ice cream, son.
yeah, well, a little bit more than that. My mom, she likes to go into the bank to retrieve cash. I like to go to the ATM. So it just shows you the generational change. Yeah. So she gets the big bills, the 100s. I only get the 20s. So a lot of times when I have a couple of $100 bills in my pocket, I think my wife knows that I must have seen my mom recently. But I don't know if I can give you concrete examples.
Like particularly when you were thinking of how is your career going to restart after these surgeries? Should it restart? Because there was risk involved. Like you said, your wife thought you were a Superman because you were continuing to do these things, but you felt this need to keep going back. There was things to accomplish. Did anyone say, "Look, Grant, you've made the money. Maybe you could be a coach or an owner, which you now are. Like, start looking at this." And did anyone say that? Like, don't go back?
No one said that. At least no one in my inner circle. I think my parents, because of their relationship to sport. My dad was in the NFL 12 years, worked for 30, almost 40 years in management for professional sports franchises with the Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Dallas Cowboys. And then my mom, who, has a unique perspective of being the wife of a professional athlete and the mother of a professional athlete. I think they all knew that there's a short window of opportunity. And to get to that level, there's an incredible sacrifice, there's a passion. I think what kind of kept me going was that I don't know if I could have lived with myself if I didn't try and I didn't exhaust every avenue to come back and play. And my wife is a singer, and I think she understands that passion, that commitment, and that drive necessary. So no one ever was like, now I had people, different teams, and, I know the Magic at different times. Well, maybe you should think about something else. And I'm sure there were whispers out there and people in the media, but in my inner circle, no. I think they understood what the sport and what the game meant to me. I think we were all very fearful when I had the staph infection, the septic, and that whole ordeal. But we always felt that there was hope and there was a chance to come back. And thankfully I did. I came back and played 9 more years without any issues related to that ankle.
Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main. That's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional, and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and or cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Main, Mizzen and Main.com. You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. When you first started out, like you said, you've had fame surrounding you almost your entire adult life, but it's actually been even longer than that because when you were in high school, people knew who you were. You were getting recruitment letters all over the place. You were clearly destined for greatness. When did you first start realizing, and you're very humble about it in the book, and I can see you're a very humble, genuine person. When did you first start really thinking, hey, I've got something here? It's not just a local thing, it's a worldwide thing.
Well, I think the worldwide thing probably happened in the NBA as the game was becoming a global game.
But I mean, like even in college, though, you were like you were like the best college player ever, practically.
I look, I was going to say on the NBA front, because of my marketing relationships, I would take international trips, and that's when it dawned on me, like, wow, people in Paris, people in Taipei, Taiwan, or Manila, the Philippines, or Hong Kong, like we used to go to Asia every summer for an Asia tour, and I used to joke that it was like my Michael Jackson moment. Like, I mean, literally, people would be screaming for me, and and thousands of people would be waiting outside my hotel room, and it was just like totally crazy. And they were starving for the NBA, and I think along with Michael Jordan, were one of the first NBA guys back in the mid '90s to go over there as the game was growing, and so on a global stage, that was my moment. But I think in high school, you're right. I played varsity. I'd say it was sort of each level, the magnitude intensified. And so in high school, early on, you show promise. You're a freshman. You're playing varsity, and then all of a sudden, you start to sort of showcase your talents and get that recognition on a national scene for your age. You go to camps, you go to AAU, so it starts to build and bubble a bit. But there's still an innocence back then. I mean, high school sports in the mid to late 80s was very different than it is now. I mean, these high school basketball players are like celebrities, and they have millions of followers on social media platforms. So it was a little bit different back then. But then you get to college, and now you're at a high-profile program, and we're winning, and we're playing in championships. And so the stakes are higher. And you realize now, like, okay, like We go to different campuses. We go to like people know who you are. People see you on TV. The power of television. You know, you know, and I don't have the exact number, and I think I put it in the book, but you know, of the 4 years I was in school, if there were 120 games, I think there were more, but there were 120 games that I played during my 4 years. I think 117 of them are on national television. You can't pay for that kind of exposure, you know, and that actually, I think, helped me as I went into the NBA with that kind of momentum and that kind of, I guess, brand relevance, if you want to call it that, as you're entering the NBA. So each step of each level you jump to, I think the intensity increased, and you could feel it. But it started in high school. The only thing that was different was in high school, you kind of went to school with kids you grew up with. I mean, these were kids you went to elementary school with. And so you've known these, you know, you've known everyone since long before you showed promise on the basketball court. So there was still an innocence and still a level of normalcy associated with that. But certainly the stakes got higher when I went to Duke.
Well, what about in terms of the talent? So at what point did you start to realize, oh, I'm better than most? At what point did it require, talent gets you so far, right? And that's when you start to realize that you love this and you have this ability to get good at it. At what point, what separated you out from the other talented players, whether it was in high school, college, the NBA? What were the specific things you did to kind of pull yourself out? And mind you, I've asked other people who are like, let's say, world class at some field or sport or game or whatever, and sometimes I get the response, I was always better than everybody. And so nothing separated me out. But how would you answer that?
Great question. I think to offer some context, I first really fell in love with basketball watching the 1982 Final Four when he was then Mike Jordan, a freshman at North Carolina. He hit the game-winning jump shot against Georgetown. After that jump shot, he became Michael Jordan. But that was when I fell in love with the game. And everything I did in that moment, I was passionate. It's all I thought about. That's all I did. I'm an only child of two only children. So I don't have a big family, somewhat sheltered growing up, wasn't really allowed to do a whole lot. So me and a basketball, that was my best friend. And whether that was outdoors, in the driveway, on the street, at the blacktop, at a friend's basketball goal, in the neighborhood, in my mom's kitchen, in the basement. I was always with a ball, always dribbling, always imagining there's a hoop there. And so watching tape, watching games, we had a Betamax. So all of this you're absorbing, you're putting the time in. And, I do think I had talent. I think I was always pretty good, but I also think I always put the time in. I think as I went into middle school, I played AAU basketball, and we won the national championship between my 8th and 9th grade year. And I think now all of a sudden playing against the best players your age from all over the country and kind of looking around and oh man, I'm just as good as these guys. That was a huge confidence boost. It's one thing when you're in your own bubble, in your own neighborhood, you're in your own community, but now to go against the so-called best in the country, I think that's when I realized, okay, you know what, I have a chance here. And all that did, I think, was just increase the intensity. And where a lot of my friends, they loved the game, but they were into other things and might socialize and go out and do all, I was focused. And not that I was thinking about the NBA necessarily, maybe more thinking about playing in college, but I found my passion and this is what I loved to do. And that's kind of all I did, that was what consumed me during those formative years.
Do you think that kind of obsessiveness, that consuming, that's a requirement for the fulfillment of talent?
Yeah, I mean, I know, was it Malcolm Gladwell has the book, and one of his books, I can't remember which one it was, but
I
just
think Outliers.
outline, and talked about the 10,000 hours. And,
Yeah.
I do think that there's, not that I'm here to plug anyone else's book, and he certainly doesn't need my plug, but yeah, I mean, I think we look at people and we say talent, or we say natural talent. And, but we don't always point to or appreciate the amount of time that went into cultivating that gift. Look, I'm 6'8". I received some great, things from my parents, genetics. My dad, the joke in my house, my dad's 6'4" and, was an incredible athlete. And my mom is a self-professed non-athlete. She's proud of the fact that at Wellesley, she opted out of physical education to take physics. So, she'll tell you she can't walk and chew gum at the same time. So my dad would often say, man, you only have half my chromosomes. You'd actually be a pretty good athlete if you had the other half too. But so yeah, I mean, you're given certain gifts, but the feel and the things about the skill and the natural, like, no, there's like, it's hours and hours and hours of work. It's a considerable amount of time being by yourself and working on your game, your imagination. I would go out with a basketball and just dribble, like, for hours. And it might not be doing drills, but just walking down the street, dribbling through my legs, going to the 7-Eleven and like, always having a ball in your hands. And to me, it was like your safe place. And yes, I was obsessive, but I didn't look at it that way at the time. I didn't think it was unusual. I think looking back at it now, it might have been slightly unusual.
I don't think it's a bad thing, by the way. I think it's a good thing. I think that's how you do get beyond, like you mentioned at the middle school championships, you were looking around like, oh, I'm as good as these people. But then the question is, how do you get better? Because not all of them made it to the NBA and then made it to the Hall of Fame. So you had to pull ahead somehow.
Well, some of them did make it to the NBA. Some of them actually, Chris Webber made it to the Hall of Fame. Huh. But no, you're right. I mean, I think there's a lot that goes into why someone is able to separate themselves from the pack. Could be environment, could be just focus and dedication. Sometimes, look, having success too soon can be dangerous. You lose that edge, that fire. I can't speak for others, but as I said, going through that experience, we were in St. Louis for the 13 and under national championship. Coming away from that, like, the fire was even greater. Like, it was even more magnified. And so, look, I had balance in my life. I had friends. I had a girlfriend. Like, I mean, I wasn't completely obsessed where there was nothing else left in my life to do than just play basketball. But I put a lot into that. And I enjoyed, as an only child, I think you grow accustomed to entertaining yourself. And a lot of that was basketball. A lot of it was either watching it, and when I watch it, I'm talking like rewinding, like back and forth, rewinding a play. Okay, what happened? Like watching it like a coach when I'm 13 years old. And so I think that helps you absorb and maybe see things and develop your feel for the game. But then also going out with, like you said, by yourself, dribbling, having a wall, pretending a wall. Like, there's a great story, and I think I put it in the book. My dad went to Yale, and we were up on Yale's campus in the early 80s. And my mom's business partner for 30 years, his children went to Yale. So we would go up to the Yale-Harvard game every other year, and we'd visit with them in their dorm. And one time, I'm outside in the courtyard. I don't have a basketball. There's not a hoop. And I'm out there sweating for like 90 minutes, pretending I'm playing basketball. And so I don't want to, engage with a bunch of college students and talk about Chaucer and things of that nature. I'm, 11, 12 years old. I'm outside. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's where your imagination sometimes, you use that to entertain yourself as it related to the sport and something you love. And that's, I'm almost embarrassed to share that, but that's kind of like, that was who I was. Like, that's what I enjoy. I could go out with nothing and imagine that I'm working on my game.
And so, you mentioned the watching and rewinding of tapes. So you're watching other players, other plays, other games, and so on. How important, and this is a weird question, but how important is the role of memory in getting good, either way you got good? Like, you obviously have to remember like certain plays that you've seen and like, oh, now I'm in a situation that was like this situation I saw 10 years ago on a tape somewhere. Like how often does that how much does that contribute to eventual greatness?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer, but I can say this. I mean, there are certain players, and I'm sure this applies in all sports, but as it relates to basketball, there's certain guys, and look, I mean, I'm probably patting myself on the back and saying this, but I felt like I fell into this category. There's certain people who just have a great feel for the game. And the question is, by the time you get to the NBA, can you teach feel? Is it something natural? Is it something that, I, I have, I won't mention names, but I've had kids I grew up with, who I played with, who we had the same love and passion. I might have put more hours in, who knows, but they didn't have that feel. And how does one develop that feel? And I don't know, like, I don't have the answer, but I do think watching film, I do think how you process information. When you go watch a game in person, when you go to the park as a 10-year-old and you're watching the adults play, what are you watching? What are you keying in on? You just watching the ball? Are you watching off? Like, all these things. Like, I would go as a kid and watch the older kids play, and I'm watching everything. I'm watching the guy boxing out, someone on the weak side. Like, and I guess subconsciously I'm doing this because I loved it and I wanted to try to learn. It consumed me. So I wanted to try to like understand it. It's like a puzzle. You want to try to you want to figure it out. Like, I love music. I play the piano a little bit. My wife is a singer, recording artist. I live vicariously through her as a musician. But when I listen to a song, I'm listening, and maybe this is the musician or the wannabe musician in me, but I'm listening to everything about the song that makes it great. So, like, what's the drum pattern? What's the bass line doing? How does the piano complement the bass line? What are the strings doing? Like, I'm listening to all of that. And maybe that's just how I'm like wired. Like, I'm like, okay, trying to understand what makes this a great song. And then the lyrics, what are they saying in the lyric? What is the melody of the sing? Like, all of that. It's like cooking, like, you got all these ingredients, you got to put it all together and make it work. And so I do think there's a little bit of that, and maybe I'm a little wired like that. And that's how I approached, sort of at a young age, watching the game. It's not just watching the ball, it's watching everything. And I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it totally makes sense. And I wonder if it starts to change now. Like, so you're, a part owner of the Atlanta Hawks. Congratulations. I recently moved to Atlanta, so I guess that's my team, even though I've never been to a basketball game in my life.
well, we
But
have to change that. You next season, you're my guest. But
all right,
continue.
excellent. I would be honored. And I'm wondering now. We're seeing like a Moneyball like approach that's starting to hit basketball, where data is showing you things that may be unobvious to look for, like the degree of the arc of the throw, or whether 3-pointers are more important than other kinds of throws. How does this change your view of basketball?
No, I mean, I think that the data and the collection of data and how you use that and how you incorporate it into your system can be healthy. And I think we've done that. Our GM, Travis Schlenk, we have an analytics department. But my philosophy has always been the data should confirm what the eyes tell you.
Hmm.
And, there's certain things in basketball that are still hard to quantify. So to me, it's a complementary piece to fielding a team and attempting to have success. I'm the managing director of USA Basketball, and I will, handpick the men's national team for the World Cup next summer and the Olympics in 2024 in Paris. I also assembled the coaching staff as well. We have data. We understand to keep up that that's a tool you want to have in your toolkit. I just worry when it becomes the end all be all. It's still a game. There's still feel to it. There's still things that I think the numbers don't always support. And as long as we don't lose sight of that, I think it's something that we can use, and we do use with the Hawks, and we will use with USA Basketball as well.
This is such a valuable service for all business owners, big businesses, small businesses, doesn't matter. I wish I had this in the many different businesses that I've started. Sometimes it seems like your business is humming, but then suddenly you don't understand it. You're starting to fall behind. You're not understanding where your costs are, where your revenues are, where your payments are. Teams are buried in all sorts of like BS work, and you can't seem to close the books. So you need like one dashboard, one source of truth. I'm jealous of this business, NetSuite from Oracle, of course, NetSuite by Oracle. I wish I'd come up with this idea. It's a brilliant concept to have all your business intelligence on one dashboard. This is why you need to know these three numbers: 37,000, 25, and 1. So 37,000, that's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. 1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your key performance indicators, your KPIs, in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need to grow all in one place. So right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance absolutely free at netsuite.com/James. That's netsuite.com/James to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/James. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin, or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month.
Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
One thing that intrigued me in your book was, your relationship with your wife, Tanya. You've both been through a lot, between your injuries, her diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, which thank God is in remission. It's hard in general for marriages to work, but, you both were on the road, you had your careers, basketball is very intense, traveling all over the place. And this is a cliche question. I'm almost ashamed to ask it, but like, what is the secret of a good marriage?
Yeah, it's funny. People ask us that, and we sometimes try to say something profound, and a lot of times we're just saying to ourselves, like, I don't know, we're just winging it. Like, I mean, it's I think a couple things. One, I think what works in one relationship may or may not work in another. My parents recently celebrated 50 year, or maybe a year ago, 50 years of marriage. And, they have a beautiful marriage and a beautiful relationship, but their relationship is different than ours, because we're different people. And so I think, I think that's something we always have to factor in. I will say with Tamia and I mean, we have unusual careers. I'm a professional athlete. She's a recording artist, and I think we have found our home to be kind of our sanctuary. And even though we have these unusual careers, we live a pretty normal, basic life, outside of our careers. And I think we've been able to separate the two. We have children who are getting older now. Our youngest is about to be in high school. But like when we come home, we're we are, I feel like the camp director, the camp counselor, or the limousine, the chauffeur for my children. Like our children have consumed us, and we've enjoyed every minute of it. And I just think it gives you a balance. It gives you a balance. And so I even think in some ways our kids don't fully appreciate us in our careers and who we are, because they just look at us as mom and dad. And so I think having family, having your children, having normalcy in your life, I think it's helped us keep a level head and stay somewhat sane through the craziness of our careers. But it's also, I think, helps strengthen our bond, as a husband and wife and as friends, and as parents. But yeah, I mean, I don't have some like, maybe I should figure out like 10 secrets or, success.
Book 2. That's the next book.
book two. But yeah, I mean, I just think you make it a priority and you try to figure out what works. And you also have to recognize that, look, we're 25 years in. I guess 22 years 23 years is our anniversary coming up in July, that you change, you grow, you evolve, you have different interests. And so I think recognizing that and understanding that, neither one of us is the same person that we were in our 20s, nor should we be the same person in our 20s. And so, but yeah, I mean, I think we have trappings of success. We have a beautiful home. We have a great lifestyle. We've been very fortunate in that regard, but we're not out here necessarily. I mean, I guess writing a book is an interesting sort of reason for writing a book, but we we enjoy our home. We enjoy the simplicity of it, and we enjoy the normalcy of our lives when we're at home.
Well, now here you are, almost soon to be 50 years old. What are you going to do for the rest of your life? What do you want to do?
I think for me, retirement has been interesting. I've done a lot of amazing things in retirement. I think where I failed in retirement is trying to do everything I've ever wanted to do all at once. I do have a tendency, and I think acknowledging your faults is part of fixing your faults. And so I will acknowledge that I sometimes take on more than I should. And I want to do everything. And I'm working now on trimming the fat a little bit in terms of some of my responsibilities, but also having some better balance. We've been conditioned, I guess, in the States, we live to work. And whereas
Right.
some other cultures, they work to live.
Right.
And so I think work and staying busy and a career, it's what validates you. When you meet somebody, the first thing so what do you do? It defines who you are in a lot of ways. And maybe in a way we've been conditioned to do that. And so I've been a little bit of a workaholic, I want to do everything. And I don't know if that's wise or smart. And I also don't know if you get the best version of yourself when you overextend yourself.
Well,
And so
you mentioned you have an interest, for instance, in music. So have you ever thought, okay, this is now a time to learn a new skill. I'm going to go back to those piano lessons and eventually be a lounge bar piano player?
no, that ship has sailed. So not only do I play the piano, I fool around and make music. I have a drum machine. I can play keys. I sample. I can make R&B and even hip hop track. I love doing that. I don't really have the time to do that right now. And my wife, who was discovered by Quincy Jones, and her first album was released on his label, she would nickname me Quincy Bones. And so it's time consuming. I don't have illusions of grandeur. I'm not chasing a career in music, not at all. But I would like to be able to have more time to learn a song. I love playing the piano. I think it's relaxing. It's fun. But you can, so it's like I said, it's finding the balance. And I think it's a blessing and a curse that you have a lot of interest. It's that you want to do a bunch of things. It's just, I have some runway left in my life. I don't need to do everything right now. And that's what I'm learning and trying to figure out how to do better.
Well, Grant Hill, author of Game. Great title, by the way. I'm surprised in the history of sports, no one has ever titled their book Game, which is good. So,
well, there's a hockey player, I can't remember his name. He has a book, I think, called The Game.
That's different from Game, because
but
Game
it's different from
could be,
Game.
Yeah.
Yes. So you're right. I was surprised to know that too.
So Game is the game is a noun. Game could be like having game. So it's whatever that is, an adjective. And so it has a little more coolness to it. But anyway, thank you for writing the book. Thank you for coming on the podcast, putting up with my questions. And I really appreciate it. It's a great book, and you say a lot of interesting things about your development and the ups and downs and the trials along the way. And it's really a compelling read and great to talk to you about it. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate your time and I the invitation to come to a Hawks game.
I'm taking you up on it.
But you come in our building, and you will become a fan. I guarantee you that. So we'll make sure that happens next year. We have the best fan experience, in my opinion, in all the NBA. And
Excellent.
Because I broadcast games, I see all the arenas. So I can tell you that objectively, or at least trying to be objective. But no, we have a lot of fun. It really is a great atmosphere. We're very diverse. It's a party, and you look like you might enjoy a party every once in a while. So.
Every once in a while. Thanks so much, Grant.
All right. Thank you.
Finding the music you love shouldn't be hard. That's why Pandora makes it easy to explore all your favorites and discover new artists and genres you'll love. Enjoy a personalized listening experience simply by selecting any song or album, and we'll make a station crafted just for you. Best of all, you can listen for free. Download Pandora on the Apple App Store or Google Play and start hearing the soundtrack to your life.
Whether in person or remote, open communication with your doctor is key to managing any condition, including heart failure.
How have you been feeling? I'm okay.
Both are great options to continue having open conversations with your doctor about how you're feeling.
I've had less energy.
And when you speak openly with your doctor, they're better equipped to help. Visit heartfailuretalks.com to learn more.